When 28-year-old Emily Sanders walked into the clinic that morning, she was terrified but hopeful. She had felt something was wrong for weeks. Her body told her one story, but the doctors told her another. And when she tried to explain, they laughed. But hours later, one simple ultrasound would make even the most confident doctor's smile fade away and leave Emily staring at the screen, trembling, whispering, "That's not possible." Please comment where you're watching us from, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notification. Emily Sanders wasn't the kind of person to panic easily. She was a high school teacher, calm, patient, grounded. Her husband, Daniel, often joked that she was the voice of reason in their marriage. But in her 8th week of pregnancy, Emily felt something she couldn't explain. It wasn't pain, not exactly. It was more like her body was warning her quietly, insistently, that something wasn't right. At first, she brushed it off. Every article she read said early pregnancy came with all kinds of strange sensations. But soon, those sensations turned to sharp pains, then dizziness, then something worse, a pulsing ache on one side of her abdomen that wouldn't go away. She tried to stay calm, convincing herself it was all normal. Daniel worked long shifts at the fire station, and she didn't want to worry him. So she kept quiet, until one night, around 2 a.m., she woke up gasping for air, clutching her side. Daniel drove her to the emergency clinic without hesitation. He was pale, panicked, but Emily stayed eerily quiet. Somewhere deep down, she already knew this wasn't going to be a normal checkup. When they arrived, the fluorescent lights of the small-town clinic felt almost too bright. A young nurse led Emily to a cold examination room, where a middle-aged obstetrician named Dr. Stephen Harlan entered with a forced smile. He didn't even look up from her chart before speaking. "So, you're about 2 months along, and some cramping?" Emily nodded. "It's more than cramping, doctor. It feels wrong, like pressure or..." But before she could finish, Dr. Harlan chuckled softly. "Miss Sanders, I've been delivering babies for 25 years. You'd be amazed what first-time mothers think is wrong. Your body's just adjusting, that's all." Daniel frowned, but she woke up in pain. She could barely breathe. The doctor waved it off. "Anxiety can do that. Hormones. It's completely normal. Trust me." Emily tried to insist that she wasn't anxious, that this pain was different. But the more she spoke, the more dismissive his tone became. Finally, Dr. Harlan sighed and said, half smiling, "If it'll make you feel better, we can schedule an ultrasound. But I'm telling you, it's going to show a perfectly healthy pregnancy." He handed her a clipboard with forms and left the room, still shaking his head. Emily sat there quietly, her knuckles white around the edges of the paper. Daniel reached for her hand, but she didn't look at him. Something inside her, instinct, fear, maybe both, whispered that this man was wrong. Terribly wrong. They waited nearly 2 hours for the ultrasound technician. By then, Emily's pain had dulled but shifted. It was now radiating up her shoulder. She remembered reading somewhere that shoulder pain during pregnancy wasn't normal. When she told the nurse, the woman looked concerned for a split second before quickly masking it with a polite smile. "The doctor will take a look soon." "Okay," she said softly. Emily noticed the subtle hesitation, the way the nurse avoided her eyes as she walked out. And that was when Emily's heart began to race. She wasn't imagining this. Daniel tried to distract her by talking about baby names. But Emily barely heard him. Her mind was elsewhere, back to that night. She found an odd, dark spot on her lower abdomen in the mirror. It wasn't a bruise. It appeared suddenly. And now, sitting under the hum of the clinic's air conditioner, she felt again that strange internal pull, like her body was begging her to pay attention. Finally, the technician entered, a young woman named Mara with kind eyes and steady hands. "All right, let's get you comfortable," she said softly. The lights dimmed. The room filled with the hum of the machine. Emily lay back as Mara applied the gel and began moving the probe across her stomach. For the first few moments, everything seemed normal. The rhythmic sound of Emily's heartbeat filled the room. Then came the whir of static as Mara adjusted the settings. But slowly, her expression began to change. Her brows furrowed. Her hand froze. And in the reflection of the monitor, Emily saw the smile fading from the technician's face. "What is it?" Emily whispered. Mara didn't answer immediately. She swallowed hard, leaning closer to the screen. "Can you hold on one moment?" she said gently. Without another word, she stood and left the room quietly, but too quickly. Emily turned to Daniel. His face was pale, his eyes locked on the empty doorway. Minutes passed. The gel on her stomach began to cool. And still, no one returned. When Dr. Harlan finally walked back in, his expression was very different this time. The confident smirk was gone. He didn't look like a man ready to dismiss her anymore. He didn't even meet her eyes as he pulled up a stool and sat beside the monitor. "Mrs. Sanders," he began slowly. We found something unusual." Emily's pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" she whispered. The doctor hesitated, then adjusted the probe again. The image flickered, came into focus, and there it was. On one side of the screen, a small, faint heartbeat flickered, but beside it was something else. A dark, shifting mass. Something that didn't belong. Dr. Harlan's voice was barely audible. "I need to run a few more tests before I can explain fully. But this isn't what I expected to see." Emily stared at the screen, her throat tightening. "Is my baby okay?" she asked. No one answered. Mara had re-entered the room, her face pale. She placed a hand on Emily's arm and said quietly, "We just need to confirm something. Please stay very still." Daniel's voice cracked. "What's happening?" But Dr. Harlan didn't respond. His eyes were glued to the monitor, scanning every shadow, every flicker of movement. Finally, he muttered under his breath, almost to himself, "That's impossible." The room felt like it froze in time. The only sound was the steady hum of the machine and Emily's trembling breath. She looked between them, tears filling her eyes. "Someone tell me what's going on," she said this time louder. "Is my baby alive?" Dr. Harlan swallowed hard, removed his gloves, and stood up. "Mrs. Sanders," he said slowly, "I think you should be transferred to the county general immediately. This might be beyond what we can handle here." Rain began to fall as the ambulance sped through the night. Inside, Emily lay on a stretcher, her hands clutching her stomach. Daniel sat beside her, trying to stay composed, but his eyes betrayed him. Every few seconds, Emily swore she could feel something aflutter, a faint pull from deep inside. The paramedic noticed her trembling and asked softly, "Are you feeling pain again?" Emily hesitated. "It's not pain," she whispered. "It's movement." The paramedic nodded, assuming she meant the baby. But Emily wasn't so sure. She looked at the heart monitor. 2 steady rhythms pulsed across the screen, one slower than the other. By the time they arrived at the county general, a team was already waiting. This wasn't a routine transfer. Dr. Harlan's report had raised alarms. A specialist, Dr. Maya Chun, took over the case. Calm, but focused, she guided Emily into the ultrasound suite. "I just want to get a clear picture of what's happening," Dr. Chin said softly. The room dimmed again. The screen lit up, and there was the familiar image Emily couldn't forget. The tiny flicker of her baby's heartbeat, and beside it, that dark, amorphous mass. Only this time, it was larger. Dr. Chin leaned forward, zooming in on the anomaly. She didn't speak at first. Her jaw tightened, and she exchanged a glance with the nurse. Emily's voice trembled. "What is that? Is it hurting my baby?" Dr. Chun took a slow breath. "It might be what's called a molar pregnancy," she explained carefully. "It's rare. Sometimes abnormal tissue grows alongside the embryo. It can mimic a heartbeat. It can even release hormones like a second pregnancy." Daniel exhaled shakily, relief washing over him, but only for a moment, because Dr. Chin's tone changed. "But this doesn't look typical," she added. "It's showing movement, almost rhythmic." Later that night, Emily was moved to a private observation room for monitoring. The doctors wanted to run more tests in the morning. Daniel stayed by her side, half asleep in a chair, while the steady hum of machines filled the room. At around 3 a.m., Emily woke to a faint sound like whispering static. She opened her eyes, thinking it was the heart monitor. But the sound wasn't coming from the machine. It was coming from her stomach, a low, irregular vibration. She pressed her hand against her skin and froze. The movement wasn't where the baby was supposed to be. It was lower, and it was pressing back. Emily gasped, and shook Daniel awake. It moved, she whispered. Not the baby, something else. Daniel rubbed his eyes, trying to calm her. You're exhausted, Em. You need rest. But before he could finish, the monitor beside her flickered again, that same dual heartbeat pattern appearing, pulsing unevenly. One beat steady, the other irregular, as if responding. The next morning, a nurse named Lena came in to check Emily's vitals. She looked young, but her eyes told a different story, weary and knowing. When Daniel stepped out to grab coffee, Lena leaned in close and whispered, You're not the first one, you know. Emily blinked. What do you mean? Lena hesitated. She glanced toward the hallway. There was another woman, 2 years ago. Same symptoms, same doctor. They transferred her here, too. What happened to her? Emily asked. The nurse's face paled. She didn't make it, but they never told the family why. Then Lena straightened up, forced a smile, and left the room, leaving Emily staring after her, heart pounding. When Dr. Chun returned later that afternoon, Emily demanded answers. Am I in danger? Is my baby in danger? The doctor hesitated. We don't know yet. Whatever this mass is, it's connected to the placenta somehow. We need to perform an MRI to see its structure. Daniel's voice shook. Connected? How? Dr. Chen looked at them, choosing her words carefully. Because it's feeding. Somehow it's drawing nutrients directly from the umbilical supply. Silence filled the room. Emily's throat went dry. You mean it's alive? Dr. Chin didn't answer. Hours later, Emily was wheeled into the MRI suite. The machine's metallic hum filled the room as she lay still, eyes closed, trying not to panic. Halfway through the scan, she heard something faint, rhythmic tapping inside her ears, syncing perfectly with her heartbeat. The technician's voice came through the speaker. Almost done, Mrs. Sanders. You're doing great. But then the tapping grew louder, faster, until it sounded like a second heartbeat, this time coming from inside the scanner's chamber itself. The machine jolted. The technician swore under his breath. Hang on, he said. On the monitor, the imaging feed scrambled, then froze on a frame that made the technician's hand go cold. In the scan, just beneath the fetus, was a faint outline, a shape something coiled and irregular, with thin, vein-like tendrils reaching toward the baby. When the scan ended, Emily was pale and shaking. She could tell something was wrong. Dr. Chun entered moments later, staring at the printouts. Her hands trembled slightly as she flipped through each one. Finally, she said quietly, We're going to need to operate. Immediately, Daniel's voice cracked. Operate? Why? What did you see? Dr. Chun looked up slowly, eyes full of disbelief. Because whatever this is, it's not part of you. And it's not human tissue. Emily's breath caught in her throat. And then before anyone could move, the fetal heart monitor spiked. One heartbeat vanished, and the other kept going. The next 24 hours would change everything. And by the time morning came, no one in that hospital would ever forget what they found inside Emily Sanders. Beat of silence. To be continued. Please like, comment, subscribe, and turn on notification. Thanks for watching.